we have a panel and we're always thinking that we're in the spotlight. And members of this panel, oops, what the heck? Are part of the community, and we're responsible to talk to other people and spread this message and make the change happen. We're the ones that need to spread this word and be able to support other people going through the challenges that we have. We need our voices to be heard. There's situations where they're developing, and we need to encourage them to finish and continue to fight. We also need to invest in each other, supporting each other so we can make the change and we can have equal opportunity and the benefits just like everybody else. And not just from benefiting from the white standard, from our own standards, the deaf African American standards. We are just as important and part of that system. And we know a lot of people have spoke to Gallaudet. They have a great program there, and I encourage them also to look at other institutions other than Gallaudet and support them as well. We could sponsor them in their research and be able to partner and have a broader mindset, because together we can make this change possible. Yes, I agree with you. It's our role and responsibility to spread this message. We do carry a lot of weight. Thanks, Dr. Resident. Right, Dr. Miscali. You have some comments as well? I hope after this pandemic is over, we can come back and have some normalcy in our lives and our future lives as well. We need to discuss and have this conversation to be continued. Yes. Now, we're having a webinar, but I think it's time for us to physically get together. I value the system when we all can be socializing together and we can keep the focus on what is important and be able to discuss that. We need to have discussions about racism and oppression and discrimination and how it can relate to sign language. It'd be really healthy for us if we could do that. Change does need to happen. We need to connect with other people like us and evaluate the system together. The system is in the past, and we need to update that and make it more current and effective for our people. We value sign language, it's true, and it's extremely important. Thank you, Dr. Lorene, for setting up this webinar. I really appreciate that. To let you know, this isn't easy to start being vulnerable and opening up to having this conversation on the topic of is ASL too white? I am always the one to be known as being stubborn, but being honest, as John Lewis would say. Have all 7 panelists seen, or did I miss anyone? Dr. McKay? Cody, you have not yet spoke. Come on. Let's hear from you, Melanie. Don't be shy. I'm sorry about that. I know my culture as an Indigenous person. I often get involved when I get ready, but I would agree with Dr. Joseph Hill about his discussions that I've seen that we need to change the picture as a whole. All those studies need to be centered around American Sign Language. We need to put a new face to American Sign Language and a variety of different ways of communicating. When African American are learning sign language in particular, training programs and interpreting programs that may not be as expressive and be able to criticize that is something we need to ignore. There's many issues there when it comes down to the RID's CPC. We must adhere to certain rules that Native and Indigenous communities actually adhere to when working in Indigenous settings, and many issues that pop up that we need to consider. Change is needed. It needs to happen. Thank you. Great. Wow. This discussion has been very amazing. And I agree with Carolyn that we need to have come together to make this possible. We need to train people like us and make that change for them. Well, it's about 1:17 now, so I'm going to ask Dr. Liz to help me look at the question and answers that we need to respond to. We have 40 questions here. I'll save some for later, and some of them we can answer right now, and some we can answer later at another time. Now, Dr. Liz, please help me, and I will open you up at the screen. Wow. Yes, as you mentioned, there are over 40 questions. That's great. Okay. Based on preceptivism and the fact that we follow other curriculums and resources for curriculums in a positive way of ASL and sign language, that's a norm. What happens in 1990 was something that was developed in 1990s, the Signing Naturally textbook that was originated 30 years ago. It's now 2021. We need to update that. So I'm wondering if those students, either white students or Black Indigenous, follow that naturally signing series of books. And I wonder if that is showcases that what we can do to provide more structure in terms of reshaping American Sign Language to be representative of diversity and to indicate equity. I see that there's two comments. First one is Melanie. It's actually quite interesting because there's publications that I've used, such as Signing Naturally textbook. Units 1 through 6 have blockages of people of color in ASL, but they still followed ASL in a very perspective way. Just because we have sign language with Native American people to show that they're part of that publication, it needs to be changed. There's something a little off about that. Okay, Dr. Moguez Riddell, the floor is yours. Go ahead. Okay, yes, I agree with Melanie's comments. This Signing Naturally program definitely needs to be revised and updated, as do other ASL education materials. The universities have used that program for a long time, and we need to develop current and more effective curriculum. Sometimes the information is quite old. So we have to think about the responsibilities of students that do follow this and what we can do to help them improve and become more a part of this culture. But actually, to incorporate that, what sign language is taught, we need to have discussions about how that is different and that can make over time, we can make that change. We don't have to live in this constant stable or maintain this stableness when we could improve. Okay, next question. Thank you, Dr. Rez. What are some other signs that we can use for beautiful? That's the same hand shape, but the signs that are for white people compared to a black person, are they the same? Is it similar to hand shape? For the sign for ugly, can use be for a person to identify a white person and how the black community signs it differently as opposed to things that versus an object. It's different. They refer to ugly as a person, and it also can be referred to as an object. Who would like to respond to this? Dr. Miskel, please. Oh, me? Okay. There's more discussions about who and how it's signed. And depending on either hand, it could differ as well. Young deaf people often discuss much, saying that black people feels like if someone else is signing, it's not from black history. It feels like it's equivalent. But if black deaf people sign, others may feel that they don't understand that word or culture. They feel uneasy about it and part of the culture that is identified and represents their identity. Black deaf people of color now sign they thoroughly discuss this with a single finger in the entire hand. But I think that we need to come together as researchers and maybe analyze this and hope in the near future we will get to a place where we can analyze two signs for black person or the black with the entire hand. Joseph Hill, did you have your hand up? Yes. When we look at how different languages are signing in the sign for black, as well as looking at research and presentations in the educational field between the sign of black versus white and black using a whole hand instead of a single finger. The blacks say that is rooted and is signed in English. Generations have used the B handshake. But deaf people are actually going back to the easiest because there are some people that agree with that sign. And we're going back to our heritage and where that originated and using it in that context with that hand shape. We have documentation of those instances in such a way that we can analyze the variety of language. And it starts with a few communities. We have to decide how we can look at these and make the change. When we talk about, again, signing black with one hand or with the B hand shape or the single finger, and we are asking the questions as what we should do, what's appropriate. There are also certain degrees of movement to which people sign black. Even the location on your face could be different depending on the community. It depends on the individual and how they were taught that sign. And looking at deaf people in America and the number of deaf people that we have in America, I mean, it's difficult for everybody to be signing the same exact way in such a short amount of time. So I think we need to consider about going back and not just the Gallaudet University, other institutions as well. We need to do that now to become successful. Last one, because we have 3 minutes for time. When I studied different sign language, I hoped for about 2 years. Thank you, fingers crossed. But no one in that culture had equality and diversity in society. So I think it's important that everybody has access to communication. That contains a number of different ways of perspectives and looking at things. I mean, we have to consider every community in every country and subsets from those communities. It's quite large. Even when we have spoken languages, we have a number of different dialects. And I think this is just about sign, and it's not. I think we need to recognize the variety of people of color and how we, of indigenous people of color, those communities here in New Mexico, which is such a beautiful, rich state between indigenous, black, and white people. There's an exchange of knowledge with specific worlds in different states. In the country Chile, for example, the use of languages differ and sign with different signs as well and facial expressions. A little unusual, but I realized even myself that these types of people were signing different forms of words in context, that there's a variety of the fruit sharing. So we accept those signs and variety. But why do we still feel like there's oppression in American Sign Language when it comes to Black communities? I think we see a lot of the same white people making these decisions from the past in their generation. I think it's the 21st century and things do need to change. We need to stick together to make this change. Dr. Liz, can you join me on screen again, please? I think we have to think about having this workshop again and having more people join us. Do we have a last comment to wrap up? Please raise your hand if we have anyone that wants to add one last comment. I know it's 1:30. We need to get your comments because there were so many people who say they want copies and recording of this discussion. and it's long overdue. If we look at what's happening today throughout the years of diversity in culture, and then the ASL being stagnant, yes, we will see those comments, and they will be posted today on the Gallaudet website through successful publications, and the news will definitely share this post for a popular webinar. I want to thank everyone again, and I'll give it over to Dr. Sims. Any closing comments? I wish we had an opportunity to have more conversations. I like to give kudos to our interpreters, Richie Bryant to the CBO office. We want to thank him very much, and also thank you to Matthew Terry, our technical assistant that helped us rearrange our pictures and able to view them largely. So thank